This is the Telo MT1, and it's, well, interesting. MT stands for mini truck, and it is indeed a mini truck. The same length as a Mini Cooper, but with 4 doors and a truck bed. It's also fully electric. Pricing is going to be in the $40,000 range with a goal of going on sale next year. Today, I'm going to review the Telo MT1 and show you all of its quirks and features. I've been using DeleteMe for years now, and let me tell you, I'm still just as grateful for it today as I was the day I signed up. The first time I saw my personal info all over the internet, it was honestly kind of alarming. My full name, old phone number, old addresses, even info about my family. It was just sitting there publicly accessible, and it wasn't just on one site, it was on dozens. I had no idea that kind of data was floating around, let alone how easy it was for anyone to get their hands on it. And listen, as someone who's pretty visible online, I've had to deal with some pretty weird stuff. Random emails, strange messages, people digging a little too deep. That's why privacy is something I take seriously, and DeleteMe has become a core part of how I protect myself and my family. That's why I always recommend DeleteMe. It's been one of the best decisions I've made when it comes to my online safety and peace of mind. DeleteMe is a subscription service that removes your personal information from hundreds of data broker sites, and here's what I love. You don't have to do anything complicated. You give them your info once, what you want removed, and then they go to work. Every few months, they send me a personalized report showing exactly what they found and what they've removed. I've gotten emails like, we found your name, phone number, and address on 38 sites, and we removed it. It's honestly kind of incredible. And they don't stop. This is an ongoing thing. DeleteMe keeps monitoring and removing your info so it doesn't just come right back. Over the years, I've watched the amount of my data online shrink more and more. It's like digital spring cleaning, but someone else is doing all the work. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for DeleteMe, now with a special discount for our listeners. Today, get 20% off your DeleteMe plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/demuro and use promo code DEMURO at checkout. The only way to get 20% off is go to joindeleteme.com/demuro and enter code DEMURO at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/demuro, code DEMURO. All right, time for the quirks and features of the Telo truck. And let's start with the basics, because this is going to take some explaining. So, the MT1, this is the initial offering from Telo, which is obviously an electric vehicle startup that's based up in the San Francisco Bay Area here in California. Now, MT, like I said before, stands for mini truck. And indeed, as I said, this is a mini truck. It's only 152 inches long, which makes it about the same size as a 2-door Mini Cooper. In fact, it's 9 inches shorter than a Honda Fit. So this is a mini truck of the highest order. By comparison, the Ford Maverick, the new small truck, that's about 4 feet longer than the Telo. So the Maverick is a gargantuan giant thing by comparison to this, which is a real mini truck. And yet, despite its small size, it still has 4 doors and a reasonably large truck bed. I'll show you how they did it, but first, the specs. Telo says they're going to offer this truck, at least initially, in 2 versions. There will be a single motor rear-wheel drive model and a dual motor all-wheel drive model, and that's this. The single motor will start in the low $40,000 range, which is pretty impressive. It's fully electric, and it has about 260 miles of fully electric range. The dual motor truck will start around $46,000, and it'll have about 350 miles of fully electric range, and it's got 500 horsepower. And so the dual motor of this little mini truck will do 0 to 60 in about 4 seconds, which is pretty impressive for a vehicle such as this. One other notable item is that Telo says there will be an extended range battery available as a $4,000 option if you want extra range than the regular truck. Also important to mention, Telo says they're going to try to get this on sale by the end of next year, so sometime in late 26. Obviously, that's not going to be full-scale volume production, but the first Telo mini trucks will start trickling out at the end of next year, a brave new world of fully electric small pickup. Now, you take just one look at this vehicle and you can tell it's gonna be a quirky one. But before I get into all the quirks and features, one other note, this is a pre-production vehicle. Now, I review a lot of pre-production cars on this channel, and usually what it means is not everything is working right. Not everything is fit right, not everything is production ready, some details might change, etc. So there's some stuff that just isn't gonna be ready for me to show you or ready to work properly as you'd expect at a vehicle in this stage. But they offered to let me check it out, and I figured I'd rather see a pre-production one than wait longer, because I want to check out the quirks and features of the Telo. And so we begin in the obvious spot, the front, with these front tires that stick out basically all the way in the front of the vehicle, giving it a rather distinctive look. Not only are the tires all the way in the front, and that's definitely unusual and quirky, but you can see these are all-terrain tires. These are BF Goodrich KO2s, one of the most popular all-terrain tires in existence for off-roading capability. Now, Telo told me that this wheel size was chosen in part because these are the smallest regularly available all-terrain tires, meaning you'll easily be able to replace them when you need new tires. But you can see a very unusual design mated to all-terrains. And the concept of all-terrains isn't just an idea. This truck has up to 10 inches of ground clearance, and of course, like I mentioned, four-wheel drive with dual motors, and so in theory it could be pretty capable off the pavement, especially when there's no real approach angle or bodywork in front of these front tires you have to contend with when you're climbing obstacles, which is pretty cool. Now, interestingly, directly behind the tires you will notice that there is a hole. Specifically, the hole is inside the wheel arch and inside the door. It actually goes from behind the tires into the door, through the door, and then out of the car. The Telo folks told me that this is for aerodynamic purposes. It actually reduces the coefficient of drag in this vehicle, having the hole here and air to channel out from behind these tires and down the side. It doesn't make the vehicle a lot less slippery or more aerodynamic, but it helps a little bit, which is important when you're talking about an electric car, and every mile of range helps. Now, when you look at the door, you will notice this sort of half oval shaped area where the hole and the air comes out, and then if you follow that directly up, you will see that the door handle has a pretty similar overall shape, and that's just intended for style. It's kind of a cool looking quirky door handle with this sort of oval oblong shape instead of your regular boring door handle rectangle. Now, on the subject of that door handle shape, you will notice that it is also carried over to the headlights, which are right here. You can see sort of three oblong oval looking things on each side. Now, right now the running lights are on. It's sort of the center piece is illuminated, as you can see. And when you turn on the turn signal, you can see how that looks. The turn signal comes on and it has kind of a cool look up front. Sort of a quirky and fun look for these headlights. And again, very distinctive compared to what you'd see on basically any other normal car. Also, one other item worth pointing out up here, I mentioned off-roading was a possibility earlier, and indeed this point right here is going to be a recovery hook on the final production vehicle. You'll have two front recovery hooks actually up in the front. Right now there's just a placeholder for it, but they'll be there on the real thing, again adding a little bit more off-road prowess for the Telo. And next up we climb inside the Telo truck, where you'll discover the interior is just about as quirky and interesting as what's on the outside. We begin with just getting in and out, which is a process that's made a little bit more difficult by the fact that the wheel, the tire and the wheel well, it's all right here kind of coming into the passenger compartment, which isn't something you have to deal with in a normal car where you have a hood and the front tire is way far ahead. Well, here everything is up front, so getting in is a little more challenging. Now, the folks at Telo recognize that, and so they put the front seats on kind of a pedestal with basically nothing underneath them, and that allows you to more easily swing your foot, your shoe, your ankle kind of inside the vehicle, even though you have this wheel well protruding into the front passenger compartment, which is a pretty cool idea, this pedestal front seat. Now, you might think it's a bit of a drawback to have the wheel wells intruding into the passenger compartment, and in some ways it is, but it also provides a huge benefit. You see, by not having having a long hood with a gasoline engine, Telo is able to move the entire passenger compartment forward, which is how they're able to package just so much truck into a small space. A drawback of that is that yes, the wheel wells intrude into the front seats, into your legroom area, but it's not really that big of a deal. However, it's certainly an unusual aspect of this vehicle's unusual design. Now, after you climb inside, one of the first things you'll notice about the interior of the Telo truck is that it is basic but functional. We begin with the gauge cluster, which you can see here behind the steering wheel in its normal spot, although interestingly, all of the various information displays have their own physical area of the screen. So you can see the gear selector display, your trip odometer and temperature display, the doors open, your range, all this stuff has kind of its own spot in the gauge cluster, so you know exactly where to look. They told me they didn't want to make it so overwhelming with information that everything's everywhere and you can't really figure it out. Instead, they all kind of have their own places. Now that's the gauge cluster screen, but over on the other side in the center, you can see the giant center infotainment screen. Now again, pre-production, and this is not currently functioning, but they've set up some sort of mock areas of this screen, like the climate control menu and others, so you get an idea of how it will functionally look when the vehicle is ready to launch, even though this software isn't ready yet. Probably my favorite component of the screens, at least so far, the software not ready yet for me to play around with, is the blind spot camera system. You put on the turn signal and the blind spot cameras pop up. You can see on either side of the vehicle. Obviously, these aren't functional. They're not actually showing where we are, but you get the idea of how they work in the production model, and it's great to have these blind spot cameras. A few brands have them, Tesla, Hyundai, Kia, and I love to see them here, and frankly, I wish everybody had them. Next up, we move on to storage and practicality in this interior. We start over on the passenger side with a glove box. That's a pretty simple thing. You pop it open, glove box, you can stick stuff in there for storage, no surprise. Interestingly, the driver also has a glove box. This little panel over here in the production model will be a driver storage area for more storage compartment stuff if you can't fit it on the passenger side or if you don't want your passenger to have it. And of course, there's more storage. In the center console, you can see here, this little panel rolls back. It's marked Telo, and underneath you can see a cup holder and a little storage compartment where you can put stuff. And you have another storage compartment in the center armrest. You lift this up and there's extra storage in here. And you have more cup holders too. There's a little kind of hidden panel in this center console area. You push on it, it pops out, and then reveals 2 additional cup holders for front seat passengers for their drinks and their convenience. And speaking of storage, one other interesting quirk of the Telo truck. Because there are those wheel wells kind of in the corners of the passenger compartment, like I mentioned, they had to kind of move the entire interior a little bit inward so the seats are a little closer together than they would be in a normal car, because otherwise your feet would be kind of impacting those wheel wells. Now the result of that is a little bit less space between the seats in the center, but it gives you a larger, thicker door panel for more side impact protection and for a larger door pocket storage area. So this is a surprisingly large and wide door pocket storage, and this little panel opens up so you have easy access to whatever it is you want to stick in there or take out. Now, another rather quirky detail in here is the materials. You look around and you can see there's a lot of cloth like you might expect for a vehicle at this price point, the seats, the dashboard, etc. It actually all looks pretty nice with some nice patterns, but you also have cork in here. You can see there's some cork in the center console and in some other places, like on the door panel right here in this big spot and this littler one. Cork as an interior material. It may sound unusual or not realistic, but actually I've been in more and more cars lately where cork is one of the interior materials, and Telo says they're not sure if that will actually go to production. It depends on wear. That's the big thing. Does it wear too quickly to actually use? But if they can use it, they say it's a very sustainable material, and obviously it's very tough and thick, and it can be used in here, or at least it is in this pre-production model, which is kind of interesting. Now, beyond the materials that you see here, it's important to point out that a very important potential buyer base for this truck, target audience, is commercial buyers who just want to use it to haul flowers or carry workers from one job site to another, all sorts of stuff like that. They're not going to need nice cloth with a nice pattern or cork trim, and Telo says there will likely be sort of a lower level base model with not as nice trim available at some point for those commercial or governmental purposes. But if you're getting one of these, you want something nice, this surprisingly delivers. And next we move on to the back seat, which is especially important in this truck. Telo tells me because they found that most of their customers say they would prefer a quad cab truck with an available back seat to haul around more passengers. You'd think like a commercial workhorse, relatively inexpensive pickup truck, a two-seater with a big bed would be okay, but they said their market research shows that's not true and a quad cab really is important, and that's exactly what this is. You have actual rear doors and an actual back seat, which again is very impressive in a vehicle that is the size of a Mini Cooper with a truck bed. It really is clever packaging in here. And there are several clever details they've strung together to make it all work. One of them is, like I mentioned, they moved the entire interior forward since you don't have to have a long hood with a gasoline engine kind of adding length to the car. So that helps. But in addition, another cool detail from Telo, the backrest of these back seats is actually the same piece as the wall between the tailgate and the passenger compartment. It's all one big thing. You don't have seats separate from that wall. It all just is together, and that gave them a few extra inches of space in here to allow for as much interior space as possible. And by the way, that wall folds down. Inside the truck, you press this little button, and then you can fold down the back seat, which again is also the wall between the bed and the passenger compartment, and now you have greatly extended your bed. It's this like folding midgate that allows you to add bed length if you have some really large item you need to haul around. That's pretty cool, and I will show you more about that and other bed-related items when I get into the bed, but let's go back to the back seat for a second. Now, I should mention it's not exactly huge back here. I have the front seat positioned where I would sit as a taller driver, and my knees are pushing up against it. My headroom is actually okay. It's not huge, but it's passable, and especially for a work truck at this price point, it works. It's not luxury. It's not going to be lie down and be chauffeured around and back, but it works. And one thing that's important to point out is underneath that front seat, like I mentioned, it's on that pedestal, and so you have pretty good room for your feet and for your toes, which allows you to stretch out a bit more than you might in basically any other truck. Also worth pointing out, you do have 3 across seating in back, so 3 seats back here plus 2 up front. You have 5-person seating capacity in this truck, which is pretty cool. Other quirks and features worth mentioning in back. For one, I love the clever double storage on the back of the front seat. Instead of just one compartment, you have sort of 2 because of the way they did these cloth folds, which is pretty cool. And if you look further in here, you will see there's a little storage compartment for your phone or other electronic device, which adds to the convenience and practicality. Now, back here you will also see 2 USB-C ports, or at least dummy spots in the pre-production car where they will locate USB-C ports. And there's a little screen back here, which they say will be used for things like heated rear seats, if they offer it, or rear seat climate controls, which will be nice to have. And there's even this cool rear seat climate vent mounted in the center down here. You can see, obviously, that will provide, well, climate for rear seat passengers, no big surprise. Also worth pointing out, on this center console in the rear, this panel right here looks like a blank, but if you tap it, push it, it opens up to reveal a cup holder. Unfortunately, only one single cup holder for the back seat. Not the most practical, but it's still nice to have that little hidden cup holder. And on the subject of storage, again, you have these wide door pockets, and so you have relatively large door pocket storage. And once again, this little door pocket storage shelf can be opened up, so you can have items go in here and come out pretty easily. Also worth pointing out in the back, if you look up, you will see a large glass roof that looks out over the world above you. Especially important for rear seat passengers, really diminishes any claustrophobia you might feel in this or any vehicle. Telo tells me that base model versions of this truck may have like a full metal roof instead of the big glass sunroof, but for now, this is what they got, and it's a pretty cool feature for this truck. And next we move on to the side of the Telo truck, where you have, well, you can see there's a panel here. If you know anything about the Rivian pickup truck, you probably have an idea of what's in this panel, and indeed, it's a little storage compartment. Open up the back door, there's this little button here, push it, and the storage door pops open. And you have this on both sides, so So the storage compartment goes all the way through under the bed for large, wide items. If you want some extra space to put them, you don't want to put them inside or in the bed. Now, Telo calls this the monster tunnel, and they call it that because it hides under the bed like a monster, which is, I think, kind of a clever little idea. And that's different from the Rivian, where it's primarily under the rear seats, but also sort of under the bed. It's kind of in an in-between space. This is more entirely under the bed. And that's especially important because, interestingly, there's actually access to this compartment from the bed. This panel can lift off and give you access in here. If you want to get your monster tunnel stuff out through the bed for whatever reason, you can do that. Right now, you got to remove these fasteners to open this panel, but Telo says that there's a possibility that could later just be a latch. You open it up and can get in depending on what people want. It's kind of a cool idea, the in-bed or side of vehicle access for the monster tunnel. And finally, we move on to the bed, which has quite a few interesting and clever features. We begin with just accessing the bed, opening up the tailgate. There's no obvious latch on the back here. There's no like handle you pull to open it up. So how do you get in back here? Well, actually, there is a latch, a little button to release it, but it's hidden under this crease in the tailgate. You just reach under here, you find it, you press it, you open up the tailgate, and that reveals the bed. Now, the bed of this truck is actually pretty impressive in a lot of ways. For one thing, in its normal, regular configuration, like you're looking at right here, it's basically the same size as the bed on most Toyota Tacoma or mid-size pickup truck models. The sort of short bed trucks, which is what most of them are these days, this is about the same bed size as that, which is incredible, again, considering the small size of this vehicle. And remember, that mid-gate section can fold down for even more bed. And when it is folded, you then have an 8-foot bed, which is basically the size of a long bed in a pickup truck these days. Most people don't even get the long bed models anymore, but you have that capability here. Now, obviously, when the mid-gate is folded, the rear window is still in place. You have the bodywork, the cabin over some part of the bed in the front, so it's not completely functional, but it's still pretty usable as a large bed despite this vehicle's incredibly small size. Of course, that's going to be an excuse people would think about a tiny pickup like this. Oh, it's not going to be big enough to carry stuff. Well, it actually is. And another impressive feature is the bed width. Because of the tiny wheels and tires on the Telo truck, you don't have giant wheel arches that intrude way into the bed. And so the bed width is actually a little bit wider than the latest Toyota Tacoma models. If you have a big flat piece of wood, you can get it in here a little bit easier, which is pretty neat. It's actually a shockingly practical bed situation back here. And there's more. You have charge ports back here. You can see 2 household style chargers, which is nice to have, and a 240 volt charger, which of course is also nice to have in certain circumstances. If you want to run a clothes dryer out in your truck, you can do it. I joke, but there are situations where it could come in handy and you might as well have it. It adds functionality. Now, speaking of chargers for this vehicle, the charge port location is rather unusual. Instead of like a fuel door on the outside, like most other charge ports, it's integrated into the tail light on the driver's side. This panel comes off on the pre-production truck. It's not particularly graceful, but the real one, apparently it will be, and that's where your charge port is located, inside the taillight. And the cool hidden quirk here is that when the truck is plugged in, the taillight will actually display the current state of charge because the charger is right there. That's a pretty cool feature. Now, over on the other side, the passenger side, there's nothing there. It's just a regular taillight, piece of bodywork, whatever. The charger is only on the driver's side. And I should point out right here, the taillights themselves are rather interesting. You can see sort of a strange look with these little dashes in the midsection. When you turn on the turn signal, it's also kind of an unusual and strange look. Not sure if this makes production, but it's kind of a cool and distinctive feature that helps set this truck apart, as if it needed any more setting apart from normal trucks. Now, other items worth pointing out back here, for one thing, towing. There is a tow hitch and it's mounted below the license plate. It's behind this plastic panel. You pull it off, the tow hitch is there, and this can tow up to 6,600 pounds, which is mid-sized truck towing capabilities, again, despite the fact that it's a small-sized truck. You also have a 1,700-pound payload capacity, which is pretty good for a mid-sized truck and very good for a little truck like this, so it is exceptionally capable. But you're probably wondering, will it be coming to market? I certainly hope so. There's a lot of promise here, a little electric truck at a reasonably affordable price point that actually has decent capabilities. And Telo says they've already collected about 8,500 pre-orders for this truck from interested people who have put down $152 as a deposit, $1 for every inch of truck, which is kind of clever. Telo doesn't plan to make these in massive numbers right away, but again, they said they hope to start trickling them out at the end of next year, which would be pretty cool. But most importantly, I'm wondering, how does this thing drive? A little tiny quad cab, weird looking truck? Let's get it out on the road and find out. Okay, driving the Telo truck. This thing looks so cool, and the concept of it is so exciting, like a affordable little electric workhorse truck. Obviously, in a lot of the country, they're not going to want a vehicle this size, a little truck like this. But for so much of our world, like a little truck to deliver stuff, to do last mile, to drive around here in the city and do whatever is so useful, as proven by sales of the Maverick and the Tacoma, which by Telo standards are actually quite large trucks. But this there's so much rationality to this, and especially when you consider the price point we're talking about. So the first thing you notice when you climb inside is undoubtedly how far forward you're sitting in this vehicle, and that is undoubtedly the big trick of this truck. If you're wondering how they're able to get 4 doors and an actual truck bed in a Mini Cooper-sized footprint, it's because they don't have a powertrain, an engine up there, and so they're able to kind of move the entire cabin up, and that allows them to deliver this sort of clever packaging. But you really notice that. It's like if you've ever driven an old school Volkswagen bus, or even the new Volkswagen bus to an extent, you're very much at the front of the vehicle, which is a little bit, I wouldn't say disconcerting, but it's interesting compared to driving a normal car where you have a hood in front of you. Here you don't. Now, with that said, you're actually sitting up more than I was expecting. It looks small, and it is small, but it has more of an up driving position than I was thinking. Passing normal cars, I do feel like I'm sitting taller than like a Mazda 3 or an Acura TL. Like, it has more of a commanding view than I was expecting that it would, which is kind of cool. Here we're passing a Hyundai Santa Cruz, a gargantuan, massive pickup truck. Now this is a pre-production car, and so it's got the typical shakes and rattles of a pre-production car. I imagine most of that stuff will be engineered out, but at this price point and at this size of vehicle, etc., like, and given who it's aimed at, it's also something you kind of expect a little bit. Like, this isn't intended to be a luxury vehicle. Rivian, etc., are luxury cars, but you pay for that, and that's what you expect in those cars. In this, like, you're expecting to get a little city-friendly kind of workhorse truck, and if that's what this delivers, and if that involves it having not being like the very highest end, nicest thing, then so be it. I think a lot of people are going to say that's an absolutely worthy trade, considering what they're looking for from this car at this price point. Steering is shockingly quick, but I guess that's probably because I'm sitting right on top of the front wheels, so it seems very quick. And acceleration is also really quick. It doesn't seem like this thing should be going this fast. I love it. It's great. Probably more than it needs to be for what it is. This is the dual motor one, and thinking about the truck's purpose, 350 miles of range and this much power and this much performance, probably not what I would be looking for if I was interested in one of these trucks. I think that the single motor, less range, and a lower price point probably makes more sense for a lot of people, unless you really wanted the four-wheel drive, or for whatever reason, if you really wanted to go really, really fast. But I have a suspicion that even the base model single motor truck is also going to be pretty fast. But I am surprised by ride quality. It's actually pretty nice. You see a vehicle in this market segment at this price point, and especially a truck, you're not thinking that it's going going to be like nice to ride in, but it actually is. It's totally like drivable. Like you could absolutely daily drive use this. I think there will be people who want to do that, but I suspect the market for this people will be more people who specifically want it as kind of a workhorse vehicle for specific tasks. People are going to buy it to do stuff, and so I think that any complaints about like loudness or whatever probably aren't really going to be that big of a deal to the actual user of the vehicle. I'm going to floor it again. It is really fast. In a shocking way, considering what it is and kind of who it's aimed at. The truck actually feels more substantial than I was expecting that it would when I saw its specs. Startup company making a tiny electric pickup truck the size of a Mini Cooper. I thought it would feel kind of like a glorified golf cart. It doesn't. It feels like a little car, which is basically what it is. This thing is just cool. It's like a cool little runabout. And if for those of you who think that the Maverick is just too big and unwieldy, no, I'm kidding. Nobody actually thinks that, but that doesn't mean there's not a market for a vehicle like this, especially one that's full electric. You just think about running costs, you think about parkability. Anytime you spend in any city, you start to understand how this could be useful as a delivery vehicle in Manhattan, as a whatever runabout in Chicago. I'm here at the zoo. They could easily use this to drive around the property at the zoo and drop the food off of the animals, which is a job that I did as a teenager in a Chevy Silverado. And on days when the zoo was busy, it was very annoying. It's too big. There are just so many like little use cases for a truck this size. And there's a lot of interest, especially here on the West Coast, for little trucks. They've always been popular, Tacomas and Chevy S10s and Colorados and all Ford Rangers, etc. And I guess we'll see how popular a really little electric truck will be. And so that's the Telo MT-1. This is an interesting little truck with a lot of quirks, but it's also a pretty neat concept. A truck that's highly useful, but also affordable, electric, and sized for big jobs in big cities. If this goes on sale when they say, at the price point they say, it will be a pretty appealing vehicle for a lot of people. And now it's time to give the MT1 the DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 56 out of 100, which puts the Telo MT1 here against what would be its rivals, stuff like the Ford Maverick and Hyundai Santa Cruz primarily. The Telo truck wins big against those, as it delivers impressive performance, good technology, shocking practicality, and reasonable pricing, and while fit and finish, noise, and quality aren't on the level of mainstream brands, I would assume a production Telo gets there. The big if, of course, is whether this can actually get to market. If they deliver this truck as expected at the price point they say, it'll be a hit among a lot of consumers, but whether that happens remains to be seen.